Hi, everyone. I'm Jim Killam. I'm with the Wycliffe Global Alliance communications team. And from time to time, we do some training videos like this. And today we're going to talk about a topic that has become very relevant to most of us, and that is how to find great stories and report great stories of what God's doing in the world when you can't be at a place in person. That's become more and more an issue, obviously through the pandemic and through some of the shrinking of organizations and resources and those sorts of things. And so we're going to take a look at that today. So let's jump to a slide presentation here, and we'll walk through this together. So again, our topic today is how to find great stories when you can't be there in person. And I chose this picture because so many of us have learned that it's very possible to find great stories when you can't be there in person. And often we have found ourselves on Zoom meetings and on different types of internet-enabled calls through the past few years in particular, when we find that the world is very accessible this way. And so let's take a look at what that might mean. Let me start with this idea that there is absolutely no substitute for being there. This is a picture of me in 2014 in Jordan. I'm talking with refugee families from Syria during the war. And there was no way I could have done that story remotely, because you just would not have been able to find the people and the translators and that type of thing during a war. But we're not always able to do that, and we're not always able to travel to a place where God is at work. There is also no substitute for this car. This is the McLaren 720S, which goes 341 miles per hour, or 549 kilometers per hour, and 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.9 seconds. This is often recognized as the best car in the world, and the base price is $321,000 US. This, on the other hand, is a 2010 Chrysler minivan. This sits in my driveway. It is my car. It is never recognized as the best car in the world. It does go 0 to 60 in, well, it does go 0 to 60. It leaks oil. It has a cracked windshield. The tires are nearly bald. You could literally buy 100 of this car for less money than the McLaren would cost you. But it's still the car that is available to me, and it gets me places. And that's what I want to relate to our topic today. I'm guessing that that's the equivalent of what most of us are working with in terms of resources for gathering stories. We don't have the McLaren, we have Chrysler minivan. Some obstacles to getting stories. Here's a few things that we all have experienced the last few years. Reduced or eliminated travel budgets, limited staff and time. Maybe travel for stories is not considered a high priority. Maybe there are still health-related travel restrictions, and who knows as to what the future may hold on that. And there certainly are always going to be politically related travel restrictions, and those are always in play for us as we try to go someplace to get a story. But we also have readily available the equivalent of the McLaren in the greatest set of communication tools humanity has ever known. We have Zoom, we have smartphones, we have fast internet, we even have slow internet, but it's almost everywhere. We have the ability to share huge files and even video anywhere in the world. And here's an example of that. This is a woman using internet on a hillside in Indonesia, set up with an umbrella and a internet antenna, and she's able to share files during the Bible translation process. So internet really is just about universal now, and we are able to connect ourselves with everywhere in the world. Interesting to look back. This is Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer, who here is introducing the first iPhone in 2007. It's hard to believe we've only had smartphones since 2007. Steve Jobs never knew that that iPhone and other smartphones like it were going to be tools in fulfilling the Great Commission, but they certainly are. And it's our process is very much about stewarding the tools we've been given, even unwittingly, by people who would not have claimed to be followers of Christ, but have invented things that have been hugely useful in ministry. So even if our world looks less like this, which is me reporting on site someplace, maybe it looks more like this today, which is sitting at home on a Zoom screen with a lot of junk around us. We still have a tremendous opportunity to gather stories from anywhere. Here's a scripture that motivates me and may motivate you. It's Psalm 96:3 from the New Living Translation, and it says, "Publish his glorious deeds among the nations. Tell everyone about the amazing things he does." Again, we have more ability to do that today than ever before, and it's fun to take a look at this scripture in that light. Here's some advantages of reporting a story remotely. Your travel expense is basically zero because you're not having to get on an airplane or on a boat or even in a car very often. And so there is no travel time and expense. Timeliness, you're able to connect with people at the time a story may be happening rather than weeks or months later. Fewer geographic or political limitations that might exist when you're trying to go someplace in person. It's often much, much easier to connect electronically, sometimes by VPN or something else that would mask location for the person so that it's not as risky for them. Asking less of busy people is another thing. Whenever you do a story trip, it is asking a lot of those around you to help you with that. And this is the remote reporting method is a lot simpler. And there's lower performance pressure, which I would say is about the same thing there, in that you are not spending lots and lots of your ministry's money on getting to a place and staying at a place and eating meals at a place and transporting around a place. And so the pressure on you to produce a great story is less, even though we all want to produce great stories, but it's a little more reasonable sometimes. Again, I'd much rather be reporting a story in person rather than remotely, but these are some reasons why this really can work, and there are those advantages to it. So with that, let's talk about 6 strategies for reporting great stories remotely. Or if you prefer, think of it as getting the most from your Chrysler minivan. So strategy number 1 would be beat reporting. What do I mean by that? It's an old newspaper term, and it means that the reporter simply would make the rounds every day, every week, go around to the police station, the fire station, city hall, whatever the entity would be, but ask questions about what's happening in that place that day. And that's how they would find stories. The same can be very true of us working in ministry, is that you figure out what your beat is. For instance, mine would be the world of Bible translation, and in specific, certain aspects of Bible translation that would be applicable to the Wycliffe Global Alliance, meaning the whole world versus what's going on in one country. Well, that's my beat. And so that's what I start to become very good at and become an expert in. And so here's some of the process here. Like I said, you routinely call or email people for story leads. You may read relevant news about a country, about a ministry, about a subject. Again, for instance, Bible translation being one. I really need to know a lot about that, even though I don't actually do the translation. I need to know about that process in order to report about it intelligently. Subscribe to ministry newsletters and magazines. That's another way you can find out about ideas that may turn into good stories. Develop a specialty. I just mentioned that with mine being Bible translation, but you may have another specialty that you are the expert in terms of your reporting. Build your sources' knowledge and expectations of what makes a good story. get them to suggest ideas without you even having to ask. And that's the next one, is make it okay for them to contact you with ideas. If they know what you're looking for, if you have built that knowledge, then that relationship grows and you start to get very good ideas handed to you sometimes. And then the last one is thank them and call attention to their help, because it's a good thing to do and it will encourage them to do it again. Here's some kinds of stories that can be reported remotely. There's a few here listed. A single interview story, often just a Q&A, question and answer format, that can work well remotely, where you're just having a Zoom conversation with someone. You transcribe it and you might have a good story. The multiple source, multiple venue story, where you might have to go to a lot of places in order to capture a bigger story. I'm going to show you an example of that soon. But another one that the picture here refers to is when the Ukraine war broke out, and there were ministries in a lot of the neighboring countries to Ukraine, sending in supplies, helping with people getting out of Ukraine, those sorts of things. And so we were able to report on a lot of that remotely and talk with many people in many locations in the same day or the same week. And that's not possible when you're traveling. So it's very good for that. Breaking news and response. Again, the war story might be the great example of that. Sources that you already know. And this would mean people that you've probably talked with before, maybe even interviewed before. So they are more comfortable talking with you on a Zoom call or on a WhatsApp call, as opposed to being together, just because they know you well already. And there's that familiarity and comfort with you that they might not have had if you didn't know them. A process story, how something works. For instance, how the process of translating the Bible for sign languages could work. That's a process story. That's something you could report remotely simply by getting someone to explain it well for you, and then you explaining it to your audience. An issue story where you solve a problem. Here's an example of that, rethinking consultancy in Bible translation, and it's a long time issue in Bible translation where that is a sticking point. We don't have enough consultants, or they need to rethink what consultancy looks like, which is what this story is about. So it's a problem-solving story. And as you talk with people in different places, in different contexts, you can come up with something pretty good. And then the last thing I have listed here is an anecdote. That can be just telling a short story or even a long story, but where you have, particularly if one person tells you the story and you're relaying it, that can be done remotely. Here's an extreme example of that. This is the book Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. This was also a movie, and it's about Louis Zamperini, who was an Olympic runner who then fought in World War II, became a prisoner of war, and went through an incredible experience of suffering and redemption, and came to Christ, actually. But this book was written by Laura Hillenbrand completely remotely. She has some health issues that left her housebound as she was reporting the book. So she did everything either over the phone or over internet with Louis Zamperini. She reported Zamperini's story so well that afterwards she had this to say. At the end, he told me that what I wrote was so true to his experience that he kept having to put the book down and look out the window and tell himself, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I'm not there anymore. Here are some story formats that can be done remotely with some help, often, always. The written story, which is what I've been talking about. You can do an audio story, just taking interviews and stitching them together into a story with recording. Audio story with slides. If you have someone at a location who can shoot some pictures for you, or if you have some pictures already and you don't have video, you can put slides, pictures behind a story done in audio, and it makes a nice presentation. A photo story. where you're just telling the story with photos alone and maybe some short captions, and a video story. Again, you'll need some help here, but if you can get someone on a site to shoot raw video for you and get it to you, you may be able to edit it into something that they weren't able to do on site. So again, lots of ways you can do this. Here's strategy number 2. Plan your trip even if you're not going. So, you know, the preparation that goes into a trip overseas, most of you, or a trip out of town, you do a lot of research. You do a lot of research into what that place is like. You look at geography, you look at climate, weather, you look at culture, news from that place, political climate, religious climate. What does the church look like in that place? It's very easy to do this for about any place in the world right now, thanks to Google, thanks to government websites, YouTube videos in particular, tourism sites. You really can become a student of the country or region where the story is taking place that you are reporting. And it becomes very important for credibility and just for the accuracy and usefulness of your story. So a few of the sites that I tend to look at when I'm going to go to a place, or even if I'm not going, but I'm wanting to know more, the U.S. State Department has travel pages for almost all countries, and it'll give especially political and safety and health information. So that's a place as an American that I often look. The embassies of particular countries always have good information. This is Cameroon's embassy page. I was helping to report stories out of Cameroon that I did not personally report last year, and so I needed to know a little more about the political climate there. So I found it through this, and then through some links on that site like Human Rights Watch, where I simply looked up the violence in the last several years in Cameroon. Here are some things that you'll have to do if you're going to be doing remote work. It's lining up interviews. And again, I would be doing all of this if I was taking the trip, but I'm doing it remotely now. Arranging a translator if needed. Often there's a language barrier and we need to find someone who's going to be a reliable translator. Work with time differences. That's particularly common to a remote story, is that the time zones need to be kept in mind. Verify technology capabilities. If video is going to be difficult with slow internet or limited bandwidth, then maybe you do audio. But knowing that in advance will help. And then you're planning audio and video recordings. Knowing the security situation of a place. Again, it's an issue for the person there more than for you when you're doing it remotely, but you may want to have that conversation over a VPN, virtual private network, where it's a lot more difficult to trace where that person is speaking from. And then I may need to provide some training as well. The last point there, and that would be if I need to help someone shoot some video for me or some photos for me or do some interviews. That's the kind of thing you can do over a Zoom call often to help with that or point them to some resources. Strategy number 3 is find your eyes and ears. If you are Western, you probably recognize Mr. Potato Head here, but find your eyes and ears in the place where you are reporting a story from. So I am fortunate to have people in different places around the world that I have mentored or worked with as interns. And today, if I need to get information about a certain country, I've got people there who I know. And it's, again, developing those contacts and developing someone with the skills to report a story, even if it's not writing it in English, or even if it's not in your language, but if they're able to gather photos, gather video, gather facts, you can do something with that. This is my friend Odabil in Ghana, who I've worked with many times and who does have the skills to report really good stories. And so if I need something in Ghana or if I need to know what's happening there, he is the first person I contact. Here's another friend, Joel. He's the guy on the left. In India. He's now a university teacher there, but he interned with me for about 3 years and we did some workshops together. But Joel is wonderful at photography, video, and writing, and can get a story when needed, and it's so valuable. My friend Zatzat in Ethiopia, she's the one in the center here. This is a photo workshop we did with Bible translation people in Ethiopia. They're handing her flash drives with photos on them that they've shot. But again, she's able to take good pictures, take good video, get facts. Even if I'm writing something, she's someone I can rely on to get the information from. And sometimes we get especially blessed with someone like Isaac here, who is in Northwest Cameroon and did some reporting for us with the Wycliffe Global Alliance last year about Bible translation in regions where there's been a lot of violence through the civil war in Cameroon. And Isaac is a native of some of those places, so he knew his way around, was able to go and report really interesting stories from those places. He wrote a text story and then provided me with raw video. I edited the videos and it turned into a really interesting package. I will show it to you here. I'm not going to show you the video, but it looked like this. And each of those people has a video interview and is part of a bigger story about Bible translation in Cameroon. I never had to leave my desk, but I was able to help Isaac in gathering that story and did a lot of the editing and publishing of that story. So a few questions you need to know as you are developing eyes and ears. Who's your primary contact person in that place? Help that person understand who and what you are looking for in terms of stories. You can discuss potential stories and angles with them. And then they can not only do some reporting, but they can help you find a person who exemplifies a broader story. So again, eyes and ears in a place are absolutely critical when you can't go yourself. Here's strategy number 4, and it's about interviewing, impactful interviews from a distance. So this is about doing Zoom interviews or WhatsApp interviews or phone interviews. And you're often working with a translator, first of all. So that may be your first step, is figuring out who that is. Choose someone who's familiar with your topic, not just the 2 languages. And then you send a list of questions in advance. I always do that so that the translator knows what to expect. I also tell them I'm looking for quotes, not just paraphrases, so that when I'm on a call and they are translating for me, and tell me what the person said, they are using their exact words, not just paraphrasing it, because to quote people, that's obviously what we need. And if they do need to paraphrase at times, I just ask them to tell me that first. And then I also say, please don't talk over the person we're interviewing, because on the video, we will still hear, we'll hear the interviewee's voice, not the translator's voice. Often we may make that into subtitles or something, but we don't want to have 2 people talking at once. So just understanding how that process works and working with your translator. Then it's a lot of the same strategies you would use for any interview. Choose a comfortable, quiet place for them to be, or have them choose a comfortable, quiet place, obviously where they have internet so they can talk with you. Send a list of questions in advance. I mentioned that before. You can certainly have other questions, but that's a good starting point. Tell them exactly how and where you plan to use this interview and make sure they are okay with this. In security sensitive places, that is especially important. They need to know how this is going to be used. As you would do in person, start with friendly small talk with an interview. You're getting them comfortable talking with you. And so I often ask them to show me around. I have them point their phone out the window or something because I'm interested in where they are, and tell me about where you are today. And then at the point where you're ready to start the formal interview, I'll start with prayer. I think it's a great approach for anything in ministry, but with interviews especially, it kind of puts you and your person that you're interviewing on equal footing. Just knowing that you're in this together to tell this story to glorify God. So we do pray before an interview. Um, Questions specifically for remote interviews. Some of these are very fun. Where are you? What can you see? What can you hear? What can you smell? Uh, those can be valuable because you may need to put some description into the story about where this is taking place, and whatever description they give you, again, they are your eyes and ears. What's the weather like? Or if it's not important to them, you can just look that up later. But often, I'm speaking here about my American audience. In some cases, they like to know about the weather. Is it warmer, colder there, whatever? Is anything interesting or unusual happening today in your city or area? And then again, I mentioned this a second ago, but show me around with your phone camera. Can we take a walk? And I just take lots of notes about what I'm seeing as that person is walking around. It's very interesting and kind of immerses you in a place where you aren't. So take advantage of technology and do that kind of thing. Watch especially for scenes and dialogue as you're being shown around. Dialogue meaning people talking to each other rather than to you as the reporter. Your goal is to put the audience on that scene. So if you can recreate scenes that you've witnessed, maybe it's someone buying something at a market, maybe it's two people just having a conversation. Anything like that helps ground us in a place. So very useful stuff. Okay, the next strategy, we're at number 5, leveraging technology. What do I mean by that? Record the meeting either to your computer or the cloud on Zoom, all 3 views plus audio, and you can edit that into a pretty good video. Remember to ask permission before you record anything, either audio or video. Another Zoom tip, if the translator is on site with your interviewee, have them sit together, but the camera only being on the interviewee. You don't need to show your translator normally. If the audio is bad, have your source record their responses on their phone or on a separate little voice recorder, and they could send you the file via email or a Dropbox type of a service. And that way you have a cleaner audio file than what you would have gotten through the Zoom interview. And in some cases now, Zoom can transcribe the interview in real time. And there are also many other transcription services available. So that's a time saver and also just helps us to report good stuff. If Zoom is impossible, here are some things you can do. Again, we're talking about leveraging technology here, but you can send your questions to the translator via email, have them send translated questions to your interviewee so that you're not surprising anyone with the questions you're asking. That person can then record audio or video responses or just type them back to you. They email the file both to you and the translator, and you work from there. So there is a lot you can do just through simple email and attachments of files. And again, because so many people have smartphones, they have access to a decent recorder through that. Photos and video, ask the person you're interviewing or someone else on site to shoot photos and video B-roll. B-roll is just shots of people doing things that aren't being interviewed. So things happening around you. Remember that some pictures and video clips should include your interviewee because we want to see them in their environment as well. And then see strategy 6, which is provide training. Again, I mentioned that I've done a couple of workshops in places where we did specifically photo training for people who don't take photos for a living. And after about an hour of instruction, we would send people out to try it with their phones, always on their phones because that's going to be the camera that's with them. But these are some examples from our Ethiopia workshop of what Bible translators shot on their phones after only about an hour of instruction. And they really did some beautiful work. just a matter of knowing how to compose a good photo and how to get at eye level with kids, for instance, and these types of things. So again, with a little bit of training, you can extend your reach by having that person in that place be your eyes and ears through photography, through video. We also have a communications page on the Wycliffe Global Alliance website, wycliffe.net. You can see the drop down there under resources, communications. We have a style guide. We have quite a few helps in terms of topics in communications, how to take better photos, finding great stories when you can't be there in person. That's an older version of this where it's me talking with a former colleague about it. So this video will accompany that one, in fact, but you can find lots of training videos there, whether you need them or need to pass them along. Let's review a little bit. Here are some ways that you can do remote stories, a video interview if possible, maybe audio only, maybe email back and forth, shooting B-roll if possible. And again, B-roll is video that is not an interview, but is scenes of things happening, whether it's just showing where you are or showing people doing things. And again, photos can serve as B-roll as well. We may need maps, we may need to find translation, and we need to use care in showing sensitive locations or faces. Finally, let's remember why we do this. We are stewarding God's stories. By that, I mean God has given us access, even if it's remote access, to stories of his work in the world. What we do with those stories is our stewardship of those. And as we honor God and glorify God by reporting those, that's good stewardship. Second one there, honor the people you interview. We put dignity first. We recognize that this may be awkward for them. Just be very gracious and be very thankful, sincerely thankful for their help in putting you in a place where you can't be. Destroying stereotypes, I think that's very helpful in looking around a place and realizing that it doesn't look like a stereotypical view of a place may look. Often people think other people in other places live much more primitively than they really do, and it's nice to destroy those stereotypes. The Danger of a Single Story, that is actually a wonderful YouTube video by a Nigerian writer, but that just means we are careful to not try to tell the story of an entire culture or an entire people through one story. And we want to not mislead. We're telling one story usually. And so let's not try to make it more than that. And then don't just take is the last point there. We're ministering to people. So that's one reason we pray before we start these things. And we just ask how we can be helpful to them as well, because this is a partnership in developing stories. So back to the minivan. God provides what we need to do what he calls us to do. It won't always be what we think we need. And lessons have been learned over and over during these past few years about that we have tools we never imagined, and we're using them in ways we never imagined. A couple of wrap-up points for you and whatever group you may be part of. What is one thing I learned in today's session that I can try in the next month? And the second one is, what new possibilities could I think about as a result of today's session? So we'll wrap up for today. I thank you for being with us. Thank you for your interest in this topic. If I can be of help to you, or if any of us at the Wycliffe Global Alliance can be of help, you can always contact me. I'm at jim_killam@wycliffe.net. And you can find videos, these training videos and other resources on our communications site. Thanks for being here. Have a great day.